The automatic doors of the Target on Riverside Boulevard slid open with their familiar whoosh, and Maya Chen stepped inside, pulling her faded navy hoodie a little tighter around her shoulders. It was a Saturday afternoon in late October, and the store hummed with that particular weekend energy, families corralling excited children, college students hunting for dorm essentials, elderly couples moving methodically through their shopping lists. Maya preferred it this way, actually. The crowds meant anonymity. The noise meant no one noticed the girl in the corner, the one who kept her head down and her earbuds in, even when they weren't playing music. She grabbed a red shopping cart, one while wobbling slightly as she guided it toward the seasonal section. Her roommate's birthday was coming up, and despite being on a tight budget, Maya wanted to get her something nice. Emma had been kind to her during their first month at State University, never asking too many questions about why Maya lived so frugally, why she took the bus everywhere, why she wore the same rotation of thrift store clothes. In a world where Maya had learned to make herself invisible, Emma's casual acceptance felt like a gift worth reciprocating. The store smelled like artificial pumpkin spice and new plastic, that distinctive retail scent that somehow managed to be both sterile and overwhelming. Maya's sneakers squeaked slightly against the polished linoleum as she made her way past the Halloween clearance, skeletal decorations already marked down 50%, their festive purpose expired. She'd always found something melancholy about holiday items on clearance, like dreams with expiration dates stamped across them. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out with one hand while steering the cart with the other. A text from her father: "Hope you're having a good day, sweetheart. Don't forget our call tonight." She smiled softly, typing back a quick response with her thumb. Their nightly calls were a ritual she cherished, even if she couldn't tell him half of what was really going on in her life. How could she explain that she'd chosen this, the anonymity, the ordinary college experience, the chance to be just Maya, not Maya Chen, daughter of billionaire tech mogul Richard Chen? How could she make him understand that his protective instincts, while born of love, had made her feel like a bird in a gilded cage? The home goods section stretched before her, a maze of organizational bins, decorative pillows, and scented candles. Maya ran her fingers along a display of ceramic mugs, each one printed with some variation of an inspirational quote. Live, laugh, love seemed to be having a moment, repeated across throw pillows, wall art, and dish towels. She suppressed a small smile. Emma would probably love something ironic, maybe one of those mugs that said, "But first, coffee," with enough earnestness to circle back around to funny. She was reaching for a particularly ridiculous mug featuring a cat wearing sunglasses when she heard it, a voice that carried across the store with the kind of volume that suggested its owner had never been told to use their inside voice, and wouldn't have listened if they had. "Mom, I want the designer one. Not this cheap garbage." Maya's hand froze on the mug. She knew that tone. It was the sound of privilege so ingrained it had calcified into entitlement, the voice of someone who had never been told no and wouldn't recognize the word if they heard it. Despite her better judgment, she glanced toward the source of the commotion. 3 aisles over, visible between gaps in the shelving, stood a woman in her mid-40s wearing what Maya's trained eye recognized as a Chanel suit, probably last season, but still worth more than most people's monthly rent. Her hair was that particular shade of blonde that required serious money to maintain, styled in smooth waves that didn't move when she turned her head. Next to her stood a boy who couldn't have been more than 16, but who carried himself with the swagger of someone who thought the world existed to serve him. The boy, tall, athletically built, wearing a designer tracksuit that probably cost more than Maya's entire wardrobe, was holding up a backpack with visible disdain, dangling it between 2 fingers like it was contaminated. His mother was scrolling through her phone, only half listening, her lips pursed in an expression of perpetual dissatisfaction. "Bradley, we're at Target, not Bergdorf Goodman," the woman said, not looking up from her screen. "Just pick something." "But everyone's going to see me with this," Bradley whined, his voice climbing. "Do you want people thinking we're poor?" Maya felt her stomach tighten. She'd encountered people like this before, when her father had insisted she attend certain social functions, when business associates had brought their children to corporate events. She'd learned to recognize the particular brand of cruelty that came wrapped in designer labels and trust funds. She'd also learned that the best defense was invisibility. Don't engage. Don't react. Don't give them a reason to notice you. She turned back to her shopping, trying to tune out the escalating argument 3 aisles over. Her fingers wrapped around the ridiculous cat mug, and she was about to place it in her cart when she heard footsteps approaching fast, followed by a sharp voice cutting through the ambient store noise. Watch it. Maya barely had time to register what was happening before she felt hands on her shoulder, not a gentle tap or an accidental brush, but a deliberate, forceful shove. Her cart went spinning away from her, the wonky wheel sending it careening sideways into a display of picture frames. The sound of breaking glass exploded through the aisle like a small bomb, and Maya stumbled forward, her arms pinwheeling as she tried to catch her balance. She didn't catch it. Her knees hit the linoleum hard, the impact sending a shock of pain up her thighs. Her palms scraped across the floor as she tried to break her fall, and she felt the sting of broken skin even before she saw the blood beginning to well up in thin lines across her hands. The cat mug she'd been holding shattered somewhere to her left, ceramic shards scattering across the polished floor like oversized confetti. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The general chatter of the store faded to a dim buzz, replaced by a high ringing in Maya's ears. She stayed there on her hands and knees, stunned, her dark hair falling forward to create a curtain around her face. Distantly, she was aware of other shoppers turning to look, of concerned murmurs beginning to ripple outward from the epicenter of the incident. Then she heard the laugh. It was sharp and nasal, utterly devoid of remorse. Maya raised her head slowly, pushing her hair back with one trembling, scraped hand, and found herself looking directly at Bradley. He stood over her, his expensive sneakers inches from the shattered glass, his face arranged in an expression of theatrical disgust. God, maybe if you weren't standing in the middle of the aisle like a homeless person, this wouldn't have happened, he said loudly, clearly performing for an audience. Some people really don't belong in public spaces. His mother appeared behind him, finally looking up from her phone. Her eyes swept over the scene, the broken glass, the destroyed display, Maya on the ground, and her expression didn't change. If anything, she looked annoyed, but the annoyance seemed directed at the inconvenience of the situation rather than her son's behavior. Bradley, come on, she said flatly. We don't have time for this. Not an apology. Not even a question about whether Maya was hurt. Just impatience, as if Maya's presence on the floor was a minor obstacle in their shopping experience. Maya felt something cold settle in her chest, something that lived somewhere between rage and resignation. This was why she'd left her old life behind. This casual cruelty, this assumption that some people mattered and others didn't, this world where your worth was measured by your bank account and your designer labels. She'd seen it destroy people, watched it corrode her father's associates into something hard and inhuman. She'd promised herself she wouldn't become that. But right now, on her knees in a Target aisle with her palms bleeding and this boy's laughter ringing in her ears, she wanted nothing more than to tell him exactly who she was. To watch his face crumble when he realized he'd just assaulted the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the country. To see his mother's carefully maintained composure shatter like the glass scattered around them. Instead, Maya took a breath and started to push herself up. I'm so sorry, let me help you. A store employee, a young woman with her hair in a neat ponytail and genuine concern in her eyes, rushed over, extending a hand. Are you okay? Did you hurt yourself? I'm fine, Maya managed, though her voice came out shakier than she'd intended. The employee helped her to her feet, and Maya could feel every eye in the surrounding aisles on her. Heat crept up her neck, that familiar burning sensation of unwanted attention. Bradley snorted. Fine? Look at your hands. You're bleeding all over the merchandise. You'll probably have to pay for that. The employee's expression hardened. Sir, you need to. I need to what? Bradley interrupted, stepping forward. At his full height, he towered over both Maya and the employee, and he clearly knew it. His eyes glittered with something ugly, something that enjoyed this. You gonna kick me out? My mother spends thousands here every month. You know who my father is? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The employee opened her mouth to respond, but Bradley's mother cut her off with a theatrical sigh. She stepped between them, her designer heels clicking purposefully against the floor, and fixed the young woman with a look that could have frozen water. "Listen," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "I'm sure you're just trying to do your job, but my son is right. We're valued customers here. Perhaps instead of harassing us, you should be more concerned about why there are clumsy people blocking the aisles." She gestured vaguely at Maya, not quite looking at her, as if she were an unfortunate piece of store debris rather than a human being. "We'll be speaking to your manager about this incident. About how we were treated." Maya felt her jaw clench, her fingernails digging into her palms before she remembered they were scraped raw. The pain brought tears to her eyes, which only made everything worse. She blinked them back furiously. "Don't cry. Don't give them the satisfaction." The store employee's face had gone red, whether from anger or embarrassment Maya couldn't tell. "Ma'am, your son pushed this young woman. There are cameras." "My son did no such thing," Bradley's mother interrupted smoothly, finally deigning to look at Maya with eyes like chips of ice. She was standing in the middle of the aisle, clearly not paying attention. If anything, she walked into him. "Isn't that right, Bradley?" "Absolutely," Bradley agreed immediately, his face arranging itself into an expression of wounded innocence that would have been impressive if it weren't so obviously false. "She literally walked backward right into me. I didn't touch her. She just fell over her own feet." He looked around at the small crowd that had begun to gather, his voice rising. "Did anyone actually see me push her? Anyone?" Maya's chest tightened as she watched people's eyes slide away, strangers suddenly very interested in their shopping lists or their phones. Of course no one had seen the actual shove, it had happened too fast, and people in public spaces were trained to mind their own business. She could see the calculation happening in real time, get involved in a messy confrontation with an aggressive teenager and his equally aggressive mother, or pretend they hadn't noticed anything and go about their day. The choice wasn't hard for most people. "I saw what happened," a voice cut through the tension, and Maya turned to see an elderly woman with a cane making her way toward them, her weathered face set in stern disapproval. "Young man, you shoved that girl. I watched you do it. On purpose." Relief flooded through Maya's chest. Finally, a witness. Someone who wasn't afraid to. "Oh, please," Bradley scoffed, looking the woman up and down dismissively. "No offense, but how good can your eyesight be? You're, like, 100 years old. You probably can't even see the end of the aisle." "Bradley." His mother's reprimand was sharp but lacked any real heat. She turned to the elderly woman with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure you think you saw something, but my son is right, perhaps you're mistaken. Easy to do in a crowded store." The elderly woman's grip on her cane tightened, her knuckles going white. "I know what I saw. And I know a bully when I see one. You should be ashamed, treating this young lady like—" "Are we done here?" Bradley's mother cut her off, already turning away. "Bradley, come on. We're leaving. This store clearly doesn't value its actual customers." She pulled out her phone again, already typing. "I'm posting about this on the community Facebook group. Everyone needs to know how we were treated." Maya stood frozen, her bleeding palms hanging at her sides, watching as Bradley and his mother simply walked away. Just like that. No consequences. No apology. Not even an acknowledgement that they'd hurt someone. They moved through the gathering crowd like royalty parting a sea of peasants, Bradley's head held high, his mother's designer bag swinging from her shoulder. "Wait," the store employee called after them. "You need to." But they were already halfway to the front of the store, leaving behind nothing but broken glass, a destroyed display, and Maya's shattered dignity. The elderly woman hobbled closer, her expression softening as she looked at Maya. "Are you all right, dear? Those hands look painful. You should get them cleaned up." "I'm fine," Maya whispered, though she wasn't. Her knees throbbed where they'd hit the floor, her palms stung, and worse than any physical pain was the familiar feeling of powerlessness settling over her like a shroud. This was why she'd left her old life. This was what she'd wanted to escape. But it turned out you couldn't escape cruelty simply by changing your circumstances. It found you anyway. The store employee was speaking into her radio, calling for a manager and probably security, but her voice seemed to come from very far away. Maya became aware that people were still staring at her, that she'd become the center of a spectacle she never wanted to be part of. A few people had their phones out. Someone was probably filming. By tomorrow, she'd probably be target fallen girl or some equally humiliating viral sensation. "Miss, please come with me," the employee said gently, touching Maya's elbow. "Let's get you to the back office. We have a first aid kit, and I want to get your information for the incident report. And I promise you, I'm not letting this go. We have cameras. We'll review the footage and—" "No." The word came out sharper than Maya intended. She pulled her arm away, shaking her head. "No, I just want to go. Please. I just want to leave." The employee looked torn, clearly wanting to do the right thing but also not wanting to cause Maya more distress. "At least let me clean those cuts. And we need to document." I said no. Maya was already backing away, her shoes crunching on broken glass. Her cart was somewhere in the debris, the ridiculous cat mug she'd been planning to buy now just more shards among the mess. None of it mattered. She just needed to get out of here, needed to breathe air that didn't smell like pumpkin spice and humiliation. She turned and walked quickly toward the exit, ignoring the employee calling after her, ignoring the elderly woman's concerned voice, ignoring everything except the need to be anywhere but here. Her vision had gone slightly blurry, from tears or shock, she wasn't sure, and she barely registered the other shoppers stepping aside as she passed. The automatic doors slid open, and the October air hit her face like a slap, cold and clean. Maya didn't stop walking. She crossed the parking lot in a daze, her bleeding hands leaving small red prints on her dark jeans when she wiped them without thinking. Her car was parked near the back, she always parked far away, another habit from her old life, when avoiding attention meant avoiding the valet spots and the reserved spaces. She was 10 feet from her beat-up Honda Civic when her phone rang. Maya pulled it from her pocket with shaking hands, looking at the screen through tear-blurred eyes. "Dad." "Of course. Their scheduled evening call." She almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail so she could have a few minutes to compose herself, to construct the careful facade of fine that she presented to him every day. But her thumb hit the accept button before her brain could stop it, and suddenly her father's warm, concerned voice was in her ear. "Maya? Sweetheart? You sound out of breath. Is everything okay?" And that was all it took. The careful control she'd been maintaining shattered like the glass scattered across that Target aisle, and Maya felt the first sob tear itself from her throat before she could stop it. "Dad," she gasped, her free hand pressed against her mouth as if she could physically hold back the breakdown. "Dad, Maya, what happened?" All the warmth had vanished from Richard Chen's voice, replaced by something sharp and focused. "Are you hurt? Where are you?" "I'm fine," she managed, though it was obviously a lie. "I'm okay, something happened at the store, and this boy, he—" She couldn't finish. Couldn't find the words to explain how small she'd felt, how utterly powerless. Couldn't articulate the way Bradley's laughter had made her feel like she was worth less than the broken ceramic littering the floor. "What boy?" Her father's voice had gone very quiet, which anyone who knew him would recognize as dangerous. "Maya, where are you right now?" "Exactly where are you?" "The Target on Riverside," Maya said, and even through her tears, she could hear how her voice shook. "But I'm leaving, I'm in the parking lot, Don't move." It wasn't a request. "Stay exactly where you are. I'm pulling up your location right now." "Are you in immediate danger?" "No, Dad, you don't have to." "Maya." He cut her off, and she could hear movement on his end of the call, rapid footsteps, a door opening. Listen to me very carefully. I need you to get in your car, lock the doors, and wait for me. Can you do that? Dad, you're in California. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing tears and probably blood across her face. It's a 6-hour flight. I'm okay, I just got upset, I shouldn't have called. I'm not in California. There was a strange tension in his voice now. I'm 20 minutes away. I flew in this morning for the Henderson acquisition meeting. I was going to surprise you tomorrow, take you to brunch, but, Maya, please. Get in your car. Lock the doors. I'm sending someone right now. Maya's stomach dropped. Sending someone? Dad, no. Please don't. I left all that behind, I don't want. But she was talking to dead air. Her father had already hung up. For a long moment, Maya stood there in the Target parking lot, her phone still pressed to her ear, trying to process what had just happened. Her father was here. In the city. And he was sending someone, which meant security, which meant the whole elaborate machinery of protection and investigation that she'd worked so hard to escape. She should have felt relieved. Should have felt safe. Instead, all she felt was a creeping sense of inevitability, like a trap closing around her. This was why she'd left. This was what she'd been running from. Not her father's love, but his power. The way his wealth and influence warped everything around it, making normal experiences impossible, turning every interaction into a performance with invisible stakes. Maya climbed into her Honda, her hands leaving small red smears on the door handle, and locked the doors as instructed. Through the windshield, she could see the Target entrance. Somewhere inside, Bradley and his mother were probably continuing their shopping trip, completely unaffected by what they'd done. They'd go home to their nice house, eat their nice dinner, and never think about her again. But they thought wrong about one thing. Maya wasn't homeless. Wasn't some random college student with no recourse, no power, no one who cared whether she'd been hurt. She was Maya Chen, daughter of Richard Chen, whose personal fortune could buy and sell 1,000 people like Bradley's father. Whose security team included former Secret Service agents and FBI investigators. Whose lawyers had made Supreme Court justices nervous. And they'd just pushed his daughter to the ground in a Target. Maya leaned her forehead against the steering wheel and waited, trying very hard not to think about what happened next. Because she knew her father. Knew how he operated when someone threatened what he loved. And despite her desperate desire for a normal life, despite all her efforts to blend in and disappear, she was still what he loved most in the world. The autumn sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the parking lot, when Maya saw the first black SUV pull into the lot. It moved with purpose, not like a normal shopper's vehicle, and it parked 3 spaces away from her car. The doors opened in perfect synchronization, and 3 people emerged, 2 men in dark suits despite the casual weekend setting, and a woman with her hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing slacks and a blazer that couldn't quite hide the bulge of a shoulder holster. Maya recognized the woman immediately. Sarah Martinez, her father's head of personal security, former FBI agent, and the person who'd taught Maya basic self-defense when she was 12. Sarah walked directly to Maya's car, her eyes scanning the parking lot with professional efficiency, cataloging exits and potential threats in the automatic way of someone who'd been doing this for decades. She rapped gently on Maya's window. Maya unlocked the door. Sarah opened the door carefully, her expression softening slightly when she saw Maya's face, tear-streaked, smudged with what might have been blood, eyes red and swollen. But her voice remained professional, measured. Maya. It's good to see you, though I wish it were under better circumstances. Your father sent me ahead. He'll be here in about 15 minutes, he was in the middle of a meeting when you called, but he's in the car now. Sarah's eyes flicked down to Maya's hands, which were still seeping small amounts of blood, the scrapes looking angry and inflamed. You're injured. We need to get those cleaned and treated. I'm fine, Maya said automatically, then felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in her throat. How many times had she said that in the last 20 minutes? How many times had it been a lie? Really? It's just scrapes. Sarah, please tell my dad this isn't necessary. I don't want to make a big deal out of. With respect, Miss Chen, that decision isn't yours to make anymore. Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. She gestured to one of the men who'd arrived with her, Thomas, Maya remembered, former Secret Service. Thomas is a trained EMT. He's going to look at your hands while you tell me exactly what happened. Every detail. And then we're going to review the security footage from the store. Maya wanted to argue. Wanted to insist that she could handle this herself, that she didn't need an army of security professionals descending on a simple shopping trip gone wrong. But the fight had gone out of her. She felt exhausted, wrung out, like a cloth that had been twisted too many times. So she extended her hands and let Thomas begin carefully cleaning the scrapes with antiseptic wipes from a first aid kit that appeared like magic from the SUV. Start from the beginning, Sarah prompted, pulling out a small notebook. Despite the smartphone clipped to her belt, she'd always preferred handwritten notes for interviews. Maya had asked her about it once, years ago, and Sarah had explained that handwriting engaged different parts of the brain, made you more likely to notice details and inconsistencies. What time did you arrive at the store? So Maya told her. About the shopping trip, about looking for Emma's birthday gift, about the boy and his mother arguing in the next aisle. About Bradley's deliberate shove, the fall, the broken glass. About his laughter and his mother's cold dismissal. About how they'd simply walked away, leaving her bleeding on the floor. As she spoke, she watched Sarah's expression remain perfectly neutral, though Maya had known her long enough to see the tiny tightening around her eyes, the slight compression of her lips. Sarah was angry, Maya realized. Quietly, professionally furious. And you have the names of any witnesses? Sarah asked when Maya finished. An employee helped me. Young woman, maybe early 20s, had her name tag but I didn't read it. And there was an elderly lady with a cane who spoke up, said she saw what happened. Maya winced as Thomas applied a stinging antiseptic to a particularly deep scrape. But Bradley and his mother didn't care. They just left. They're still in the store. One of the other security team members, David, Maya thought his name was, called out. He'd been on his phone, and now he looked up with a grim smile. Just checked out at Register 7. Purchased $347 worth of merchandise. Used a credit card under the name Victoria Whitmore. Sarah's pen scratched across her notebook. Whitmore. That's useful. Run a full background, employment, property records, family members, social media, the works. I want to know everything about Victoria Whitmore and her son before Mr. Chen arrives. On it, David confirmed, already typing rapidly on his phone. Maya felt her stomach twist with a complicated mixture of relief and dread. This was happening. The full machinery of her father's resources was spinning up, turning its attention toward the Whitmores. Part of her, the part that was still kneeling on that cold floor, hearing Bradley's mocking laughter, wanted this. Wanted them to face consequences for once in their privileged lives. Wanted them to understand that actions had repercussions, that you couldn't just hurt people and walk away. But another part of her remembered why she'd left this world behind. The way power, once deployed, tended to steamroll everything in its path. The way her father's protection, however well-intentioned, could feel like suffocation. Sarah, Maya said quietly, watching Thomas wrap her hands in gauze with practiced efficiency, please don't let my dad go overboard. I know how he gets when someone hurts his daughter. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Maya, you chose to live independently, and your father has respected that choice even though it worried him. But you're still his daughter. You're still under his protection, whether you invoke it or not. And someone assaulted you today. She closed her notebook with a decisive snap. That has consequences. Before Maya could respond, another black SUV pulled into the parking lot, this one larger, armored, moving with the controlled speed of a vehicle that knew it had right-of-way. It pulled up directly in front of Maya's Honda, and before it had fully stopped, the rear door was opening. Richard Chen emerged like a storm given human form. He was 62 years old, with silver threading through his black hair and the kind of bearing that made people instinctively straighten their posture when he entered a room. He'd built his fortune from nothing, a first-generation immigrant who'd turned a small software company into a tech empire worth billions. He'd been profiled in Forbes, interviewed by 60 Minutes, courted by politicians and business leaders worldwide. Maya had watched presidents defer to him. But right now, he just looked like a terrified father. Maya. He crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides, and suddenly Maya was being pulled into a hug so tight it forced the air from her lungs. She felt his hand cradling the back of her head, the way he used to when she was small and scared of thunderstorms. "Are you all right? Let me see your hands. Sarah, get the car ready. We're taking her to Dr. Morrison right now." "Dad, I'm fine," Maya protested, but her voice was muffled against his shoulder. "It's just scrapes. I don't need a doctor." Richard pulled back, holding her at arm's length so he could examine her face. His eyes, dark and sharp, the eyes that had stared down hostile boardrooms and government regulators, were wet with unshed tears. "You called me crying. You were hurt. Someone put their hands on you and hurt you. That is not fine, Maya. That will never be fine." He turned to Sarah without releasing his grip on Maya's shoulders. "Tell me everything." Sarah's report was concise and thorough, delivered in the clipped tones of someone who'd briefed countless officials on sensitive situations. She outlined the incident, the witnesses, the Whitmore's response. With each detail, Maya watched her father's expression harden, transforming from worried parent into something much colder and more calculating. "Victoria Whitmore," Richard repeated when Sarah finished. "I want to know who she is, who her husband is, where they work, where they live, where their children go to school. I want their financial records, their social connections, their standing in the community. I want to know everything about them by the time we're done with dinner tonight." Already in progress, David called out from where he was still working his phone. "The son is Bradley Whitmore, 16, junior at Riverside Prep, that's the private school on the east side. Father is Marcus Whitmore, senior partner at Whitmore & Associates, a local law firm. They own a house in the Meadowbrook development, valued at around $2.3 million. 3 cars registered to the family, BMW, Mercedes, and a Tesla. Mother appears to be unemployed, active in several social clubs and charity boards. Very active on social media." Richard's expression didn't change, but Maya felt the quality of his stillness shift into something dangerous. "A lawyer's family. How interesting. Sarah, I want footage from inside the store. Every angle. I want statements from every witness. I want the name of the store manager, the regional manager, and whoever owns the franchise. I want all of it documented, time-stamped, and ready for our legal team within 2 hours." "Dad," Maya tried to interject, but he wasn't done. "And get me Marcus Whitmore on the phone. Now." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Dad, please," Maya said, her voice rising with a tinge of desperation. "You don't need to call his father. This is exactly what I didn't want. I left California to get away from all of this, the security, the investigations, the way your power makes everything complicated. I just wanted to be a normal person having a normal college experience." Richard finally looked at her, really looked at her, and his expression softened fractionally. He cupped her face gently with both hands, careful to avoid her injured palms. "Maya, sweetheart. You are not a normal person. I know you want to be. I know why you want to be. But the reality is that you're my daughter, and that comes with both privileges and responsibilities. One of those responsibilities, my responsibility, is making sure that people who hurt you understand there are consequences. But I don't want revenge," Maya insisted, pulling away from his touch. "I don't want to ruin these people's lives. I just want to move on, forget this happened, go back to being invisible." "Invisible." Richard repeated the word as if tasting something bitter. "Is that really what you want? To make yourself small and invisible because you're afraid of the attention that comes with being who you are? He shook his head slowly. I didn't raise you to hide, Maya. I raised you to stand up for yourself, to use the resources you have to make things right. You raised me in a bubble. The words burst out of Maya before she could stop them, months of suppressed frustration finally finding voice. You raised me with bodyguards following me to school, with security checks on every friend I wanted to make, with background investigations on every boy who asked me to prom. Do you know what it's like to be 16 and have your father's security team run a criminal background check on your date? Do you know how isolating that is? Richard's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. Around them, the security team had discreetly moved farther away, giving them the illusion of privacy while still maintaining their protective perimeter. The sun had nearly set now, the parking lot lights beginning to flicker on, casting orange pools across the asphalt. I know it was hard, Richard said finally, his voice quiet but firm. I know I was overprotective. After your mother died, when you were just 6 years old, the thought of losing you too became unbearable. Every threat, every potential danger, I saw them all, magnified 1,000 times. Maybe I went too far. Maybe I should have given you more freedom, more space to make your own mistakes. He paused, his eyes holding hers. But I will never apologize for keeping you safe. And I will never stand by while someone hurts you and faces no consequences. Maya felt tears threatening again, but she blinked them back. This isn't about keeping me safe. This is about control. About making sure the world works the way you think it should work. But it doesn't, Dad. Sometimes bad things happen, and you can't fix them with money or lawyers or security teams. You're right, Richard said, surprising her. Sometimes bad things happen that I can't fix. When your mother got sick, when the cancer spread despite the best doctors and the most expensive treatments money could buy, I learned that lesson very thoroughly. I was powerless then, Maya. Completely, utterly powerless. His voice had gone rough with old pain. But this I can fix. This boy who pushed you, this woman who raised him to think he can treat people like garbage, they don't get to walk away. Not from you. Not on my watch. Before Maya could respond, David approached cautiously, his phone in hand. Sir? I have Marcus Whitmore's office on the line. His secretary says he's in a deposition and can't be disturbed, but I explained it was urgent. She's pulling him out now. Richard took the phone without hesitation. Put him on speaker. There was a moment of hold music, something classical and generic, and then a man's voice came through, sharp with irritation. This is Marcus Whitmore. I'm in the middle of a very important deposition, so whoever this is, it had better be. Mr. Whitmore, my name is Richard Chen, Richard said, his voice perfectly pleasant and utterly cold. I'm calling about an incident involving your son, Bradley, and my daughter that occurred approximately 45 minutes ago at the Target on Riverside Boulevard. I thought you'd want to know that Bradley assaulted my daughter, pushed her to the ground, and left her bleeding while he and your wife walked away. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Marcus Whitmore spoke again, his voice had changed completely, the irritation replaced by something that might have been concern, or might have been calculation. I'm sorry, did you say Richard Chen? As in Chen Technologies? The same, Richard confirmed. Now, about your son. Look, Mr. Chen, I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding, Marcus interrupted smoothly, his lawyer instincts clearly kicking in. Bradley is a good kid, very respectful, excellent student. If there was some kind of incident, I'm certain it was an accident. Teenagers, you know, they can be clumsy, they don't always watch where they're going. If your daughter was somehow injured in a crowded store. There was no misunderstanding, Richard cut him off, his voice hardening. And it was no accident. Your son deliberately pushed my daughter. We have multiple witnesses, and by the time we're done reviewing the security footage, we'll have video evidence as well. What I'm trying to determine right now is whether you're the kind of father who takes responsibility for your son's actions, or the kind who makes excuses for them. Another pause. Maya could almost hear Marcus Whitmore recalculating, running through his legal options, trying to figure out how much trouble his family was actually in. She'd heard that tone before, at her father's business meetings, the sound of someone realizing they'd badly miscalculated the power dynamics of a situation. "Mr. Chen," Marcus said carefully, "I appreciate you calling me directly rather than simply filing charges or a lawsuit. That shows good faith on your part, and I'd like to match that good faith. Why don't we all sit down together, our families, maybe in my office or a neutral location, and discuss what happened? I'm sure we can reach an amicable resolution." "An amicable resolution," Richard repeated, his tone suggesting he found the phrase amusing. "You mean the kind where you write a check and expect the problem to disappear? The kind where your son faces no real consequences because daddy's a lawyer who knows how to make things go away?" "Now wait just a minute," Marcus's voice took on an edge of anger. "No, you wait," Richard said, and the temperature in his voice dropped another 20 degrees. "Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Whitmore. You're going to leave your deposition right now. You're going to collect your wife and son from wherever they are. And you're going to bring them back to the Target on Riverside Boulevard within the next hour. Because my daughter deserves an apology, a real one, face to face, from the people who hurt her. And because I want to look you in the eye while we discuss exactly what kind of consequences your son is going to face for assaulting my daughter. You can't demand that I can demand anything I want," Richard said flatly. "And right now, I'm being remarkably generous. Because the alternative is that I call the police, file assault charges against your minor son, initiate a civil lawsuit against your family, and use every resource at my disposal to make sure that Bradley Whitmore's name becomes permanently associated with the word assault in every background check that ever runs on him. I can make that happen, Mr. Whitmore. You know I can. Or you can be here in an hour and we can handle this like civilized people." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for a long moment. Maya watched her father's face, seeing the same expression she'd seen when he was negotiating billion-dollar deals or staring down hostile board members. This was Richard Chen at his most dangerous, not shouting, not threatening, simply stating facts with the absolute certainty of someone who had the power to make them reality. "1 hour, Marcus finally said, his voice tight. "We'll be there." "Excellent. And Mr. Whitmore? Make sure your son understands the gravity of this situation. Because if he shows up with the same attitude he displayed earlier today, this conversation is going to become much less pleasant for everyone involved." Richard ended the call and handed the phone back to David. "Sarah, coordinate with Target's management. I want the store manager here as well. And get the security footage downloaded and ready to review." Sarah nodded crisply. "Already in motion. The regional manager is also coming. She wants to personally apologize for how the situation was handled. They're very concerned about the liability implications." "They should be," Richard said. He turned back to Maya, and some of the steel in his expression softened. "I know this isn't what you wanted. I know you'd rather just leave and never think about this again. But sweetheart, you have to understand, if we let this go, if we let Bradley Whitmore face no consequences for what he did, we're not just letting him get away with hurting you. We're giving him permission to hurt someone else. Maybe next time it's a girl who doesn't have a father with resources. Maybe next time it's someone who can't fight back at all. Is that what you want?" Maya felt her resolve wavering. She hadn't thought about it that way. Hadn't considered that her desire to avoid confrontation might enable Bradley to do this to someone else. The memory of his laughter, the casual cruelty in his voice when he'd said she didn't belong in public spaces, would he use that tone on some other girl? Would he push someone else, secure in the knowledge that his family's money and status would protect him from any real consequences? "No," she admitted quietly. "That's not what I want." "Then trust me," Richard said, squeezing her shoulder gently. "Trust that I know how to handle people like the Whitmores. And trust that I will never let anyone hurt you without answering for it." He glanced at his watch. "We have an hour before they arrive. Let's get you cleaned up properly, get some food in you, you're probably shaky from the adrenaline crash, and then we'll deal with this as a family." The word family made something in Maya's chest loosen. Despite everything, despite the security team and the show of power and all the complications that came with being Richard Chen's daughter, she was grateful not to be alone in this. Grateful to have someone who cared enough to drop everything and come running when she needed him. "Okay," she said. "But Dad? When they get here, can you maybe dial it back to like a 7 instead of a 10? I don't want to completely destroy these people. I just want them to understand that what they did was wrong." Richard's expression suggested he thought a 10 was entirely appropriate, but after a moment, he nodded. "A 7. I can work with that. Though I'm reserving the right to go to an 8 if the boy shows up with an attitude." He guided her toward the SUV. "Come on. There's a restaurant 2 blocks from here that has excellent soup. You're going to eat, calm down, and let me take care of this." As Maya climbed into the back of the armored SUV, she caught sight of her reflection in the tinted window, tear-stained, exhausted, with bandaged hands and scraped knees hidden under her jeans. She looked like she'd been through a war. In a way, she supposed she had been. The war between who she wanted to be and who she actually was. Between the normal college student and the billionaire's daughter. Between independence and protection. Maybe, she thought as the SUV pulled out of the parking lot with its security escort following close behind, maybe those two things didn't have to be mutually exclusive. Maybe she could have both, a normal life and a father who loved her enough to move heaven and earth when she needed him. Maybe the key was learning when to invoke one and when to embrace the other. Bradley Whitmore had made his choice when he'd pushed her to the ground and laughed about it. He decided she was nobody, nothing, someone who could be hurt without consequence. He was about to learn how wrong he'd been. The restaurant Richard chose was called Harvest Moon, a upscale but comfortable establishment known for its farm-to-table menu and discreet private dining rooms. The kind of place where business deals were made over expertly prepared meals, where the staff knew how to be present without being intrusive, and where the prices on the menu made most college students wince. Maya found herself installed in a private room at the back, separated from the main dining area by frosted glass panels that let in light while maintaining privacy. A bowl of butternut squash soup appeared in front of her almost immediately, steam rising from the surface in delicate wisps, along with fresh bread still warm from the oven. Her father sat across from her, his own meal largely ignored as he worked his phone with the focused intensity of someone orchestrating multiple operations simultaneously. "Eat," he said without looking up. "All of it. You've had a shock and you need to keep your blood sugar stable." Maya picked up her spoon with bandaged hands, the gauze making her movements slightly clumsy. The soup was delicious, rich and creamy with hints of sage and nutmeg, but her stomach was twisted with anxiety about the confrontation to come. Still, she forced herself to eat, knowing her father wouldn't relent until she'd finished. Around them, the security team had established a presence both inside the restaurant and outside. Sarah sat in the corner of the private room, laptop open, reviewing footage that had been sent over from Target's security system. Every few minutes, she would make a note or tap a key, her expression professionally neutral. "Got something," Sarah said after about 15 minutes. She turned the laptop so Richard and Maya could see the screen. "This is from camera 12, positioned at the end of the home goods aisle. Timestamp shows 3:47 p.m. Maya felt her stomach clench as she watched the grainy color footage. There she was, reaching for a mug, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Then Bradley entered the frame from the left side, moving fast, his mother visible behind him. The angle wasn't perfect, it captured more of Maya's back than her face, but what it showed was unmistakable. Bradley's hands shot out, connecting with Maya's shoulder and back with obvious force. She stumbled forward, the cart rolling away, and then she was falling, her arms flailing as she tried to catch herself. The impact of her knees hitting the floor was almost audible even without sound. The cart crashed into the display, and picture frames exploded outward in a shower of glass and wood. For a moment, the video showed Bradley standing over Maya, his mouth moving, the mocking words that Maya remembered too clearly. Then his mother appeared, also speaking, her body language dismissive. They turned and walked away while Maya remained on the ground, and a store employee rushed into frame to help. Richard's expression throughout the viewing had been carved from stone. Now he looked at Sarah. That's assault. Clear, deliberate, unprovoked assault of a minor by another minor. Send a copy to our legal team. I want their assessment of criminal charges and civil liability within 30 minutes. Already sent, Sarah confirmed. They're working on it now. We also have statements from 3 witnesses, the store employee, the elderly woman with the cane, and interestingly, another customer who came forward after hearing we were collecting witness information. All 3 corroborate Maya's account. Good. Richard finally picked up his fork, cutting into his untouched salmon with precise movements. The Whitmores think they're coming here to smooth things over with an apology and maybe a small settlement. They're about to learn that this situation is significantly more serious than they imagined. Maya pushed her soup bowl away, most of it eaten but her appetite completely gone. Dad, what are you actually planning to do? I agreed to let you handle this, but I need to know what handling it means. Richard set down his fork and gave her his full attention. What I'm planning to do is make sure Bradley Whitmore understands that actions have consequences. That you can't hurt people simply because you think they're beneath you. That privilege doesn't grant immunity from basic human decency. He paused. As for the specific consequences, that depends on how this meeting goes. If they're genuinely remorseful, if the boy offers a real apology and his parents commit to meaningful accountability, then perhaps we can resolve this privately. But if they show up with lawyers and attitudes, if they try to minimize what happened or blame you, then I will pursue every legal option available. Including criminal charges? Maya asked quietly. Including criminal charges, Richard confirmed. Bradley is 16, old enough to be tried as a juvenile but with a record that could follow him. His parents could face civil liability for his actions. The store could face a lawsuit for inadequate security. There are multiple pressure points here, Maya, and I'm prepared to use all of them if necessary. Before Maya could respond, Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and looked up. They're here. Marcus Whitmore, his wife Victoria, and their son Bradley just arrived at the Target parking lot. David's escorting them to the store manager's office as requested. Richard checked his watch. 53 minutes. Either very eager to resolve this, or a lawyer who understands the optics of appearing cooperative. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. Ready? Maya took a breath and nodded, though ready was definitely not how she felt. Together with Sarah, they left the restaurant and climbed back into the waiting SUV. The drive back to Target took only 5 minutes, but it felt much longer. Maya watched the familiar suburban streets roll past, trying to prepare herself mentally for seeing Bradley again. For facing the boy who'd hurt her and the parents who'd raised him to think it was acceptable. The Target parking lot was more crowded now, the evening shopping rush in full swing. But the area near the entrance had been partially cordoned off, not with actual barriers, but with the security team's vehicles positioned strategically to create a buffer zone. David stood near the entrance, speaking into his phone, and he nodded to Richard as they approached. They're in the manager's office, David reported. The store's regional manager is also present. She insisted on being part of the conversation. The boy seems uncomfortable. Parents are putting up a strong front, but there's definitely tension. Good, Richard said simply. He turned to Maya, his expression softening slightly. If at any point this becomes too much, you can leave. Just give me a signal and Sarah will take you somewhere else. All right? Maya nodded, even though she knew she wouldn't leave. This was her confrontation as much as her father's. She'd earned the right to see it through. The store manager's office was accessed through a door marked employees only near the customer service desk. Sarah led the way, moving with the confident authority of someone who was used to opening closed doors. The office itself was cramped and utilitarian, metal desk, file cabinets, motivational posters on the walls, and a handful of uncomfortable-looking chairs that had been arranged in a rough circle. The Whitmores sat on one side, Marcus in the center, wearing an expensive suit that suggested he'd come straight from court. Victoria still in her Chanel but looking significantly less composed than she had earlier, and Bradley between them, his confident swagger completely absent. He sat hunched forward, his hands clasped between his knees, and when Maya entered the room, his eyes widened with something that might have been recognition or fear. Across from them sat a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and a Target name tag that read Regional Manager Susan Pierce. She stood when Richard entered, extending her hand with a professional smile that didn't quite reach her worried eyes. "Mr. Chen, thank you for agreeing to meet here. I want to first offer my sincere apologies for what happened in our store today. We take customer safety very seriously, and we'll discuss Target's liability later," Richard cut her off politely but firmly. "Right now, I'd like to focus on the people actually responsible for assaulting my daughter." He turned to face the Whitmores, and Maya watched all three of them instinctively straighten in their chairs. Her father had that effect on people. "Mr. Whitmore, Mrs. Whitmore, Bradley. Thank you for coming." Marcus Whitmore stood, extending his hand in the reflexive gesture of a man who'd spent his career making connections. "Mr. Chen, I appreciate the opportunity to address this situation face to face. I believe there's been a significant misunderstanding." "There's been no misunderstanding," Richard said, ignoring the extended hand until Marcus awkwardly withdrew it. "Your son assaulted my daughter. We have video evidence, multiple witnesses, and her injuries to prove it. What we're here to determine is whether you're interested in handling this privately and responsibly, or whether we need to involve law enforcement and the courts." The color drained from Victoria's face. Bradley seemed to shrink further into his chair. Marcus's expression shifted through several calculations before settling on something that approximated conciliatory concern. "Mr. Chen, I understand you're upset. As a father myself, I would be too. But I think assault is a very strong word for what was, at most, an unfortunate accident between teenagers in a crowded store." "It wasn't an accident," Maya said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. All eyes turned to her, and she lifted her bandaged hands slightly. "Bradley pushed me. Deliberately. With both hands. I was standing still, looking at merchandise, and he shoved me hard enough that I fell and injured myself. Then he laughed about it and said I didn't belong in public spaces." "That's not," Bradley started, but his mother grabbed his arm, squeezing hard enough to make him wince. "Bradley, don't say anything," Marcus warned, his lawyer instincts kicking in. He turned back to Richard. "Mr. Chen, again, I think there's room for interpretation here. A crowded store, a minor collision, things escalating due to misunderstanding. Would you like to see the video?" Sarah asked mildly, setting up her laptop on the desk. "Because I have it right here. Camera 12, timestamp 3:47 p.m. Shows everything very clearly." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I'd prefer we not turn this into a litigation preview. I came here in good faith." "Then act in good faith," Richard said coldly. "Stop making excuses for your son's behavior and address what actually happened. He hurt my daughter. He showed no remorse. He left her bleeding on the floor. Those are facts, Mr. Whitmore, and no amount of lawyer speak is going to change them." The office fell silent. Maya could hear the muffled sounds of the store beyond the door, carts rolling, checkout beeps, customer conversations. Normal sounds of normal people having normal shopping experiences. It felt surreal, sitting here in this cramped office, watching these two powerful men face off over what had started as just another Saturday afternoon. Finally, Victoria spoke, her voice thin and strained. "What do you want? Money? Is that what this is about? Because if you're trying to shake us down..." "Mom." Bradley's voice cracked with horror. "Don't shake you down?" Richard's laugh was utterly devoid of humor. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm worth more than $3 billion. I have zero interest in your money. What I want is infinitely simpler and somehow more difficult for you to provide. I want an apology. A real one. I want accountability. And I want to know that your son understands the gravity of what he did." He moved to stand directly in front of Bradley, who shrank back as if expecting to be struck. But Richard's voice, when he spoke, was almost gentle. "Bradley. Look at me." Slowly, reluctantly, Bradley raised his eyes. Richard gestured to Maya, still standing near the door with her bandaged hands visible. "That girl you pushed? Her name is Maya. She's 18 years old. She's a freshman in college, studying biology because she wants to help people. She has a roommate who she was buying a birthday gift for when you decided she was in your way. She has hopes and dreams and people who love her. And today, you hurt her. Not accidentally. Not in a moment of carelessness. You deliberately pushed her to the ground because you decided she wasn't important enough to treat with basic human respect." Bradley's face had gone red, whether from shame or anger Maya couldn't tell. "I didn't mean, she was just standing there, and I was in a hurry, and you thought that gave you the right to put your hands on her?" Richard's voice remained level, but there was steel underneath. "Tell me, Bradley, is that something you do often? Push people out of your way when they inconvenience you? Or is Maya special somehow? Was there something about her that made you think she deserved to be treated like garbage?" Bradley looked desperately at his parents, but for once, they had nothing to offer him. Marcus sat rigid, his lawyer's mask firmly in place but cracks showing around the edges. Victoria had her hand pressed to her mouth, her earlier hauteur completely evaporated. "My son made a mistake," Marcus tried again, but there was less conviction in his voice now. "He's 16. Teenagers make poor choices sometimes. That doesn't make him a criminal." "It makes him exactly a criminal," Richard interrupted. "Battery is a crime, Mr. Whitmore. You know that as well as I do. If I call the police right now, and I can, they're on standby, your son will be arrested and charged. As a juvenile, yes, but with a record. And depending on the DA's office, they might push to try him as an adult given his age and the deliberate nature of the assault." Maya saw the exact moment when the reality of the situation truly hit the Whitmores. Marcus's professional composure cracked, Victoria let out a small sound of distress, and Bradley's face went from red to white in seconds. "You can't," Victoria started. "I absolutely can," Richard said. "And if your son had hurt anyone else, if he'd pushed a girl without resources, without a father willing to fight for her, I probably would have already done it. Because that's what should happen when someone commits assault. There should be consequences." He paused, letting that sink in. "But my daughter asked me to give you a chance. To see if you were capable of genuine remorse and accountability. So that's what this meeting is. Your chance." Sarah chose that moment to turn her laptop around, the frozen frame of the security footage clearly visible. "This is the moment of impact," she said quietly. You can see Bradley's hands extended, the force of the push, and Maya's trajectory as she falls. It's unambiguous. Any prosecutor would love this footage. Bradley was staring at the screen, and Maya watched his expression shift from defensive anger to something else, something that might have been the beginning of actual understanding. His hands were shaking. "I didn't think," he whispered. "I didn't think it would." She fell so hard, and there was all that blood, and his voice broke. "I was scared. I didn't know what to do, so I just left. Mom said we should leave, and You followed me," Victoria said sharply, turning to her son. "I told you we needed to go, that getting involved would just make things worse." "You told him to leave?" Richard's attention swung to Victoria like a spotlight, and she withered under it. "Your son hurt someone, and instead of making sure she was okay, instead of calling for help or accepting responsibility, you told him to walk away?" "I was trying to protect my child," Victoria shot back, some of her earlier defiance returning. "That's what mothers do." "I saw it was an accident." "It wasn't an accident, Mrs. Whitmore. We've established that. What you saw was your son commit assault, and instead of teaching him accountability, you taught him that running away was acceptable. You taught him that his comfort was more important than someone else's pain." Richard's voice had gone very quiet, which somehow made it more devastating. You failed him. You failed as a parent in that moment. The words hung in the air like a condemnation. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Tears were streaming down her face now, her carefully applied makeup running in dark streaks. I didn't want him to get in trouble. He's a good kid, we've given him everything, and sometimes I think that's made him. She couldn't finish, dissolving into sobs. Marcus put his arm around his wife, but his own expression was ravaged. What do you want from us? He asked finally, all the fight gone from his voice. Tell me what you want, and if it's in my power to give it, I will. Richard looked at Maya, and she understood he was giving her the choice. She could push for criminal charges. Could demand financial compensation. Could use her father's power to destroy this family if she wanted to. The Whitmores had hurt her, dismissed her, made her feel worthless. She had every right to make them pay. But looking at Bradley now, really looking at him, she didn't see the arrogant bully from the store aisle. She saw a scared teenager who'd made a terrible choice, influenced by parents who'd never taught him the value of people outside his social circle. She saw someone who maybe, possibly, could learn from this. Could become better than he'd been an hour ago. I want a real apology, Maya said, her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside her. Not a lawyer's apology. Not a sorry you're offended apology. A real one. I want Bradley to understand what he did wrong and why it was wrong. Bradley looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed. For a long moment, he didn't speak, and Maya thought he might not be capable of it. Then he stood, slowly, his hands still shaking. I'm sorry, he said, and his voice cracked on the words. I'm really, really sorry. You were just standing there, and I was mad about something stupid, about a backpack, about having to shop at Target like that was some kind of punishment, and I took it out on you because it was easy. Because I could. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Mom always says we're better than other people. That we deserve more, that we shouldn't have to put up with, but that's bullshit. That's all bullshit, and I knew it was bullshit, but I believed it anyway because it made me feel important. He took a shaky breath. You fell so hard. I heard the sound when you hit the floor, and I saw your hands, and I knew I'd really hurt you. And I laughed. I actually laughed because I was scared and I didn't know what else to do, and laughing made me feel like I was still in control. But I wasn't in control. I was just being cruel. He met Maya's eyes directly. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't matter. And I'm sorry I walked away instead of helping. You deserve so much better than that. The office was completely silent. Maya studied Bradley's face, looking for signs of performance, of manipulation, of the practiced insincerity she'd learned to recognize in her father's world. But all she saw was genuine shame and regret. It didn't erase what he'd done. Didn't heal her scraped palms or bruised knees or the humiliation she'd felt lying on that floor. But it was a start. Thank you, Maya said quietly. I accept your apology. Richard looked at her with something like surprise, then nodded slowly. He turned to Marcus and Victoria. Here's what's going to happen. Bradley is going to complete 100 hours of community service, not through some cushy volunteer program at your country club, but at a real organization that helps people who don't have resources. A homeless shelter, a food bank, something that will give him perspective on what life is like for people who can't just buy their way out of problems. Marcus nodded quickly. Yes, absolutely. We can arrange. Additionally, Richard continued, your family is going to make a donation to an anti-bullying organization. Not a tax-deductible write-off, but a meaningful amount that actually helps fund their programs. Let's say $50,000. Victoria gasped, but Marcus squeezed her shoulder. Agreed. And finally, Richard said, his eyes boring into Bradley, if I ever hear that you've bullied, harassed, or harmed anyone else, if your name crosses my desk in connection with any similar incident, this video goes to the police, and I pursue criminal charges to the fullest extent possible. This is your one chance, Bradley. Your one opportunity to prove that you can learn from this and become a better person. Don't waste it. I won't, Bradley said, and he sounded like he meant it. I promise, I won't. Richard nodded, then looked at Susan Pierce, the Target regional manager who'd been watching the entire exchange with wide eyes. Ms. Pierce, I assume Target will be reviewing its security protocols to ensure that incidents like this are addressed more effectively in the future? Yes, absolutely, Susan said quickly. We'll be conducting additional training for all staff on handling assault situations, and we'll be re-evaluating our camera placement to ensure full coverage of. Good. I'll expect a written report on those changes sent to my office within 30 days. Richard pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it to her. And I think a significant gift card for my daughter would be appropriate, given that she was injured on your property due to inadequate security response. Of course, Mr. Chen. We'll prepare that immediately. Richard turned back to the Whitmores. We're done here. Marcus, you'll have the community service arrangements confirmed with my assistant Sarah within 48 hours, along with proof of the charitable donation. Sarah will also provide you with the organization we've selected. I have specific groups in mind that I think will be educational for Bradley. Marcus stood, extending his hand again. This time, Richard took it briefly. Thank you, Marcus said quietly. For giving Bradley, a chance to make this right. Don't thank me, Richard said. Thank my daughter. This resolution was her choice, not mine. I would have been much less generous. All three Whitmores turned to Maya. Victoria's makeup was completely ruined now, mascara streaked down her cheeks, but her expression was earnest. Thank you, she whispered. I know I failed today. As a mother, as a person. I taught my son that he was better than others, and that was wrong. That was so wrong. I'm sorry. Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The emotions of the past 2 hours were catching up with her, exhaustion, relief, residual anger, and something that might have been closure. Bradley approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. I meant what I said. About being sorry. And about doing better. I know you don't have any reason to believe me, but I'm going to prove it. I'm going to do the community service, and not just show up and count hours. I'm going to actually try to understand. He hesitated, then added, and I deleted all my social media posts complaining about shopping at Target. That seems really stupid now. Despite everything, Maya felt a small smile tug at her lips. It was pretty stupid. The tension in the room broke slightly, and Bradley managed a weak, embarrassed laugh. Yeah. I'm learning that pretty much everything about how I acted today was stupid. He glanced at his parents, then back at Maya. I hope someday you can forgive me. Really forgive me, not just legally or whatever. Maybe, Maya said honestly. That depends on whether you actually change, or whether this is just performance because you got caught. Fair enough, Bradley said. Richard began guiding Maya toward the door, one protective hand on her shoulder. Sarah had already packed up her laptop and was coordinating with the security team via discreet hand signals. As they moved toward the exit, Marcus called out one more time. Mr. Chen? May I ask you something? Richard paused, turning back. Why? Marcus asked. Why give us this option instead of just crushing us? You could have. We both know you could have destroyed my practice, my reputation, made sure Bradley's future was ruined before it started. Why show mercy? Richard was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. Because my daughter asked me to. Because she's a better person than I am, with more faith in humanity's capacity for growth and change. And because I remember what it's like to make mistakes when you're young, though admittedly, none of mine involved assaulting anyone. He paused. But also because I want you to understand something, Mr. Whitmore. The mercy here isn't coming from me. It's coming from Maya. I'm still watching. I'm still paying attention. And if your son proves that her faith in him was misplaced, if he hurts someone else because you failed to teach him this lesson, then the consequences will be severe and final. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Marcus said, his voice hoarse. Thank you. Both of you. As they walked out of the office, back through the store, past shoppers who had no idea what had just transpired in that cramped room, Maya felt the weight of the day beginning to lift. The ache in her hands remained, the bruises on her knees would take days to heal, but the emotional wound felt less raw. She'd stood up for herself. She'd faced her attacker. She'd chosen mercy without weakness, accountability without cruelty. The parking lot was dark now, the October evening having fully settled in. The security team formed their protective formation around Richard and Maya as they walked to the SUV. Before climbing in, Maya paused and looked back at the Target entrance, where the Whitmore family was emerging, walking close together, Victoria with her arm around Bradley's shoulders. "Do you think he'll actually change?" Maya asked her father. Richard followed her gaze. "I don't know. Maybe. People can surprise you, sometimes for the better. But that's not our responsibility anymore. We gave him the tools, it's up to him whether he uses them." He smiled at her, genuine warmth breaking through the protective intensity that had characterized the past few hours. "I'm proud of you, you know. For how you handled that. For choosing the harder path." "The harder path?" Maya raised an eyebrow. "I thought the harder path was crushing them." "Crushing them would have been easy," Richard said. "Satisfying in the moment, but easy. What you did required actual courage, showing mercy to someone who hurt you, believing in their capacity to change, risking that they might prove you wrong. That's the harder choice. And the right one." They climbed into the SUV, and as it pulled away from the Target, Maya leaned back against the leather seat and closed her eyes. Her phone buzzed, Emma, her roommate, wondering where she was and if she was still planning to bring dinner. Maya smiled and typed back a response, "Long story. Bringing Thai food to make up for being late. Want spring rolls?" "One condition," Richard said as they drove through the darkening streets. "You let me assign at least one security person to you. Not following you everywhere, not invading your privacy, but someone nearby. Just in case." Maya opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. Today had shown her something she'd been reluctant to admit. Sometimes protection wasn't about control or lack of trust. Sometimes it was just about love, about someone caring enough to make sure you were safe. And maybe she could have both, independence and a safety net. Normal life and extraordinary resources when she needed them. One person, she agreed. But they have to be discreet. No suits, no earpieces, no making my classmates think I'm witness protection or something. "Deal," Richard said immediately, clearly having expected more resistance. "Sarah has someone perfect in mind, former campus security, currently working as a grad student. She'll blend right in." They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the city lights streaking past the tinted windows. Then Maya asked the question that had been nagging at her since the confrontation ended. "Dad, what would you have done if I'd said I wanted to press charges? If I'd wanted you to go full nuclear option on the Whitmores?" Richard didn't hesitate. "I would have done exactly that. Criminal charges, civil lawsuit, pressure on Marcus's law firm, everything. Because if that's what you'd needed to feel safe and valued, I would have given it to you without hesitation." He looked at her seriously. "But I'm glad you didn't need that. I'm glad you're strong enough to choose mercy. It means I raised you right, even if I was overprotective doing it." Maya felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were different. Not tears of pain or humiliation, but of gratitude and love. "You did raise me right," she said softly. "Even when you were driving me crazy with the security teams and the background checks and the overprotective dad stuff. You raised me to stand up for myself and to see the humanity in other people. Even people who don't deserve it." "Especially people who don't deserve it," Richard corrected gently. "That's when it matters most." The SUV pulled up in front of Maya's apartment building, a modest 3-story structure near campus, the kind of place where college students lived on ramen and dreams. So different from the penthouse she'd grown up in, from the world of private jets and corporate towers. But it was hers. Her choice. Her life. "Want to come up?" Maya asked. Meet Emma, see the place? Richard smiled, clearly pleased to be invited into this part of her world. I'd like that. Though I should warn you, I'm probably going to have opinions about your security setup. Your locks, your windows, your fire escape accessibility. Dad. But I promise to keep them to myself unless you ask, he finished with a slight grin. Mostly. They climbed the stairs together, the security team staying back to give them space while still maintaining their perimeter. Emma answered the door on the second knock, her blonde hair in a messy bun, wearing pajama pants and an oversized sweatshirt despite it being only 7 p.m. There you are. I was starting to worry. Emma stopped mid-sentence, taking in Maya's bandaged hands, her father in his expensive suit, and the obvious signs of emotional exhaustion on her face. Oh my God, what happened? Are you okay? Long story, Maya said, stepping inside. Emma, this is my dad. Dad, this is Emma, my roommate and friend who deserves a much better birthday present than what I was going to get her at Target before everything went sideways. Nice to meet you, Mr. Chen, Emma said, shaking his hand despite her confusion. I've heard a lot about you. Though Maya said you were in California? I was. Now I'm here. Making sure my daughter is all right after a difficult day. Richard looked around the small apartment with the same analytical gaze he probably used in boardrooms. Maya could see him cataloging the cheap furniture, the instant ramen packages visible in the kitchenette, the textbooks stacked precariously on a wobbly desk. But his expression remained neutral, non-judgmental. You have a nice place. Very cozy. It's a dump, Emma said cheerfully, but it's our dump. Can I get you anything? We have water. And possibly some questionable orange juice. I'm fine, thank you. Richard turned to Maya. I should let you rest. But I'm staying in town for a few days, supposedly for business, but really to make sure you're okay. Can we have dinner tomorrow? Just the two of us, somewhere you choose? Yeah, Maya said. I'd like that. He hugged her carefully, mindful of her injuries, and pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all, any time of day or night. And Sarah will have that security detail in place by tomorrow afternoon. After he left, Emma immediately pounced. Okay, spill. Everything. Why are your hands bandaged? Why was your billionaire father here instead of California? And why do you look like you've been through an emotional meat grinder? Maya collapsed onto their second-hand couch and began to tell the story. All of it, the shove, the humiliation, the confrontation, Bradley's apology, the strange resolution that felt both incomplete and exactly right. Emma listened with growing outrage, interrupting occasionally with creative suggestions for what she would have done to Bradley if she'd been there. So this asshole just pushed you? Emma said when Maya finished. Like, deliberately pushed you to the ground, and his mom was totally okay with it? Initially, yeah. But I hope, they understand now how messed up it was. And you just forgave him? Let him off with community service? Emma didn't sound judgmental, just genuinely curious about Maya's reasoning. I didn't forgive him, Maya corrected. Not really. I gave him a chance to earn forgiveness. There's a difference. She looked at her bandaged hands. And honestly, destroying his future wouldn't have made me feel better. It would have just made me someone who uses power to hurt people, and that's exactly what I hated about that world to begin with. Emma was quiet for a moment, then reached over and squeezed Maya's shoulder. You're a better person than me. I would have gone full scorched earth. You say that, but you wouldn't have, Maya said with a tired smile. That's why we're friends. You're one of the few people who sees me as just Maya, not Maya Chen, daughter of. You treat me like a normal person. You are a normal person, Emma insisted. A normal person who happens to have abnormal resources. But that doesn't change who you are. She stood up. Come on. I'm ordering Thai food, your treat since you're suddenly comfortable letting daddy's money fly, and you're going to take a hot shower while I set up a terrible movie marathon. We're talking real bottom-of-the-barrel stuff. Movies with like 2-star ratings max. That sounds perfect, Maya said, meaning it. The hot water felt like absolution against Maya's skin, washing away the day's tension along with the grime and dried blood. She stood under the spray longer than she should have. Their apartment's water heater was temperamental at best, watching pink-tinged water swirl down the drain. The scrapes on her palms stung when the water hit them directly, but it was a clean pain. Honest. Not like the complicated ache in her chest when she thought about Bradley's face during his apology, about his mother's tears, about the strange mercy she'd chosen. When she finally emerged, wrapped in her oversized bathrobe with her dark hair dripping down her back, Emma had transformed their small living room into something approximating comfort. The couch was piled with every pillow and blanket they owned, the coffee table was covered with Thai food containers still steaming, and Emma's laptop was queued up to something called Sharknado 3. I wasn't kidding about the terrible movies, Emma said, patting the spot next to her on the couch. Come on. Eat something that isn't soup and watch people get eaten by flying sharks. It's therapeutic. Maya settled in, accepting a container of pad thai and a fork. For the first time in hours, her stomach actually felt like it could handle food. How is watching people get eaten by sharks therapeutic? Because it puts things in perspective. Your day was bad, sure, but at least there weren't any airborne predatory fish involved. Emma pressed play. Also, the acting is so terrible it's impossible to take anything seriously, which I'm guessing is what you need right now. She wasn't wrong. As absurd CGI sharks flew across the screen and D-list celebrities delivered their lines with all the emotional depth of cardboard cutouts, Maya felt the knot in her chest slowly loosening. Emma kept up a running commentary, pointing out continuity errors and physics violations with the enthusiasm of a professional critic, and Maya found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time since she'd walked into that Target. Oh come on! Emma shouted at the screen. That's not how gravity works. That's not how anything works. I don't think scientific accuracy is really the priority here, Maya said between bites of pad thai. Well, it should be. If you're going to make a movie about flying sharks, at least commit to the internal logic of your flying shark universe. They were halfway through the second terrible movie, something involving a tornado made of fire, when Maya's phone buzzed with a text. She expected it to be her father checking in, but instead it was from an unknown number. This is Bradley Whitmore. I got your number from my dad who got it from your dad's assistant. I hope that's okay. I just wanted to say again that I'm really sorry about what happened. My first community service shift is scheduled for Saturday morning at the downtown food bank. Thought you might want to know. Anyway. Sorry again. Maya stared at the message for a long moment, trying to decode its sincerity. Was this genuine outreach, or was it performance? Insurance in case her father changed his mind about pressing charges? A way to make sure she didn't have second thoughts about the resolution they'd reached? Who is it? Emma asked, noticing her expression. Bradley. The kid who pushed me. He texted to apologize again and let me know about his community service. Emma's eyes narrowed. Want me to text him back something scathing? I'm very good at scathing. Maya smiled despite herself. No. I think. She typed out a response slowly, choosing each word carefully. I think I'll just say this, thanks for letting me know. I hope you take the community service seriously. Real change starts with uncomfortable action. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Bradley's response came almost immediately, I will. I promise. Thank you for giving me a chance. He seems appropriately remorseful, Emma observed, reading over Maya's shoulder without shame. Still think you should have let your dad destroy him, but I respect your moral high ground. It's not about moral high ground, Maya said, setting her phone aside. It's about... I don't know. Not becoming the thing I hated? If I'd used my dad's power to crush Bradley just because I could, how would that make me different from Bradley using his privilege to push me because he could? Because he hit you first? Emma suggested. That's generally how justified retaliation works. Maybe. But retaliation isn't the same as justice. And justice isn't the same as revenge. Maya pulled one of the blankets around her shoulders, suddenly feeling the exhaustion of the day settling into her bones. I saw his face during that meeting. He was genuinely scared. Genuinely sorry. And I hope, that fear and remorse will teach him more than any punishment my dad could have levied. Emma was quiet for a moment, then reached over and squeezed Maya's hand gently. You know what? You're probably right. And even if you're wrong, even if Bradley goes back to being a privileged asshole in a week, you can know you tried. You gave him a chance to be better. That's all anyone can do. They finished their terrible movie marathon around 11 p.m., by which point Maya could barely keep her eyes open. Emma helped her to her bedroom, a space barely large enough for a twin bed and a small dresser, and made sure she had water on her nightstand and her phone within reach. You okay? Emma asked from the doorway. Today was a lot. Like, a lot. You don't have to be okay. I'm not okay, Maya admitted, climbing under her covers. But I think I will be. Eventually. Maybe even by tomorrow. That's the spirit. And hey, if you change your mind about wanting me to do something terrible to Bradley Whitmore, just say the word. I know people who know people. You absolutely do not know people who know people. You don't know what I know, Emma said mysteriously, then grinned. Sleep well, Maya. Tomorrow's a new day, and it's statistically unlikely to involve any more assault. That's the most comforting thing anyone's said to me all day. After Emma left, closing the door softly behind her, Maya lay in the darkness and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. The fear from the moment of impact. The humiliation of being on the ground. The anger at Bradley's laughter and his mother's dismissal. The complicated relief of her father's arrival. The strange satisfaction of the confrontation. The uncertainty about whether she'd done the right thing. Her phone buzzed one more time, her father, as expected. Good night, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. Always have been, always will be. Sweet dreams. Maya smiled and typed back, good night, Dad. Love you. She fell asleep still holding her phone, her bandaged hands resting on top of the covers, and dreamed of flying sharks and teenage boys learning to be better in a world where mercy and justice could somehow coexist. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray, October asserting its authority over what had been an unseasonably warm week. Maya woke to the sound of rain pattering against her window and Emma singing off-key in the shower. For a blessed moment, she forgot about everything that had happened, and then the ache in her hands reminded her, and it all came rushing back. She checked her phone, no new messages from Bradley, which was probably good. One message from her father asking if she wanted to have brunch at 11. A missed call from Sarah with a voicemail saying her security detail would be in place by noon and she'd receive a text with the person's photo and information. Maya groaned and rolled out of bed, examining her hands in the morning light. The scrapes looked better, still angry and red, but no longer seeping. She could probably remove the heavy bandaging and just use some smaller bandages. Small victories. By the time she'd showered and dressed in jeans and a comfortable sweater, Emma had breakfast ready, or what passed for breakfast in their apartment. Instant oatmeal and coffee that tasted slightly burnt but was caffeinated enough to make up for it. So, Emma said, sliding into the chair across from Maya at their tiny kitchen table. Your dad texted me. Maya's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. He what? Texted me. Introduced himself properly, thanked me for being your friend, and asked if there was anything I needed. Like, anything at all. Emma's expression was caught between amusement and disbelief. Is your dad always like this? Just casually offering to solve people's problems? Pretty much, Maya admitted. What did you say? I said I was good, thanks, but that our apartment could use a carbon monoxide detector because I'm pretty sure ours stopped working last month and our landlord is useless. Emma grinned. He said he'd have one delivered today. Also a fire extinguisher and a first aid kit that apparently makes ours look like a band-aid and a prayer. Of course he did. Maya couldn't help but smile. This was her father, unable to stop protecting, even by proxy. I hope you didn't take offense to the implication that our apartment is a death trap. Oh, it totally is, Emma said cheerfully. I'm just glad someone with resources noticed. Also, he offered to pay for my textbooks next semester, which I politely declined because I have some pride, but holy shit, Maya. Your dad is intense. That's one word for it. He really loves you, though. Like, that's obvious even through text. The way he was asking about you, making sure I knew who to call if you needed anything, offering to, and I quote, ensure your living situation is safe and comfortable. Emma leaned back in her chair. Must be weird, having that much focused care pointed at you all the time. It can be, Maya said slowly, thinking about it. When I was younger, it felt suffocating. Every friend I made had to be vetted. Every party I wanted to attend required security coordination. Every normal teenage experience was filtered through the lens of is this safe, is this appropriate, who will be there, what are the risks? I felt like a prisoner in a very luxurious cage. Is that why you didn't tell anyone here who you are? Who your dad is? Maya nodded. I wanted to know what it was like to just be me. Not the generis, not the billionaire's daughter, just Maya. A normal college student with normal problems. She laughed without humor. And then yesterday happened, and I realized I can't just be normal Maya. That's always going to be part of who I am, whether I want it to be or not. Heavy thoughts for a Saturday morning, Emma observed. Want to do something fun? Take your mind off all of this? Before Maya could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi Maya, this is Detective Maya Chen, no relation to your dad despite the name. I'm your new security detail. I'm a grad student in the criminal justice program, and I'll be blending in around campus. You won't see me most of the time, but I'm there if you need me. Here's my number for emergencies. Attached was a photo of a woman in her late 20s with brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing jeans and a university sweatshirt. She looked normal, non-threatening, exactly like 1,000 other grad students on campus. Maya had to admit Sarah Martinez had chosen well. That's your security person? Emma asked, looking at the photo. She looks like she could be in one of our classes. That's the point, Maya said. Discreet protection. I can live with that. They spent the morning doing laundry in the building's basement, a profoundly normal activity that Maya found oddly comforting after the drama of the previous day. Emma kept up a steady stream of gossip about their classmates, and Maya let the familiar rhythms of ordinary life wash over her. This was what she'd wanted. This was what she'd left California to find. At 11, her father's driver picked her up, the same armored SUV from yesterday, but today with no security team visible. Just the driver and her father waiting at an upscale brunch place downtown that probably required reservations months in advance. You look better, Richard observed as Maya slid into the booth across from him. More rested. I am. Emma and I watched terrible movies and ate Thai food. It was exactly what I needed. Maya accepted a menu from the hovering waiter. And before you ask, yes, I'm okay. Really okay, not just saying it. I believe you, Richard said, though his eyes still scanned her face with paternal worry. Your new security detail is in place. Detective Chen comes highly recommended, former NYPD, working on her PhD in criminal justice, excellent at blending in. You won't know she's there unless you need her. I met her. Virtually. Maya ordered the Eggs Benedict and watched her father's shoulders relax slightly. Dad, I know yesterday was scary for you. The call, the situation, all of it. And I'm sorry I worried you. Don't apologize for being hurt, Richard said firmly. That's never something you need to apologize for. Though I will admit, getting that call, hearing you cry, it took years off my life. He managed a small smile. But I'm glad you called me. Glad you let me help. I know you've been trying to establish independence, and I respect that. But you're still my daughter, and I'm still your father. That doesn't change just because you're in college now. Their food arrived, and they ate in comfortable silence for a few moments. Then Richard pulled out his tablet. I have some updates on the Whitmore situation, if you want to hear them. Maya wasn't sure she did, but curiosity won out. Okay. Bradley's community service has been arranged. He'll be working at the downtown food bank on Saturdays, and at a youth mentorship program on Wednesdays, helping middle school kids with homework and providing positive role models. Both organizations have been briefed on the situation and will be providing detailed reports on his participation and attitude. Richard swiped to another screen. The $50,000 donation has been made to the National Anti-Bullying Coalition. It's already being used to fund a new program for schools in underserved areas. That's good, Maya said, meaning it. Marcus Whitmore also reached out to me personally this morning, Richard continued. He wanted to thank us again for handling this privately, and to let me know that he and Victoria are starting family counseling. Apparently, Bradley's behavior yesterday was a wake-up call for them about some larger issues and how they've been parenting. Maya set down her fork. Really? They're actually going to therapy? So he claims. Time will tell if it's genuine or just more performance. Richard's expression was skeptical. But I told him we'd be watching. That Bradley's behavior going forward would determine whether we'd made the right choice in showing mercy. Do you think we did? Maya asked. Make the right choice? Richard considered the question seriously. I think you did. Whether it was the choice I would have made is irrelevant. You're an adult, Maya. This was your situation to resolve as you saw fit. And I think you chose compassion where I might have chosen punishment. That's not weakness, that's strength. That's wisdom I'm not sure I possess. The admission surprised Maya. Her father was not a man who often acknowledged his own limitations. You would have protected me, she said. That's its own kind of wisdom. Perhaps. But protection and growth aren't always compatible. I'm learning that. He smiled at her. You're teaching me, actually. How to let go without letting down. How to support without smothering. It's harder than building a billion-dollar company, I can tell you that. They finished brunch talking about lighter things, Maya's classes, her biology lab partner who kept trying to flirt with her despite her complete lack of interest, Richard's upcoming merger that had him spending more time in courtrooms than conference rooms. It felt normal in a way their conversations hadn't felt in years. Like they were finding a new balance, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than just parent-child hierarchy. As they were leaving, Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression shifted, not quite concern, but something alert. Sarah Martinez just sent me something. Video footage from the downtown food bank this morning. Bradley's there already? Maya checked her watch. It's only 1 p.m. His first shift was scheduled for 10. But apparently, he showed up at 8:30, asked if he could start early. Richard pulled up the video on his tablet, tilting it so Maya could see. The footage showed the food bank's warehouse area, industrial shelving stacked with canned goods, volunteers moving boxes, families waiting in an orderly line to receive assistance. And there, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans instead of his usual designer clothes, was Bradley Whitmore. He was helping an elderly woman load groceries into a wheeled cart, his movements careful and respectful. The woman was talking to him, gesturing animatedly, and Bradley was listening, actually listening, nodding, responding. When they reached her car, he helped load everything carefully, then stood back and waved as she drove away. The video jumped forward, time-lapsed, showing Bradley throughout his shift. Stocking shelves. Sorting donations. Carrying heavy boxes for people who couldn't manage them. Sitting with a small child while her mother filled out paperwork, showing him how to fold a paper airplane. At no point did he pull out his phone. At no point did he look bored or resentful. He just worked. Genuinely engaged with the people around him, treating them with respect and care. That's... Maya didn't know how to finish the sentence. Unexpected, Richard supplied. Though I'm still reserving judgment. One good day doesn't erase the behavior that got him here. No, Maya agreed. But it's a start. She thought about that video throughout the rest of the weekend. About Bradley's transformation from the arrogant boy in Target to the respectful volunteer at the food bank. About whether people could really change, or whether they just got better at hiding who they truly were. About mercy and justice and the uncomfortable space between them. 3 weeks later, Maya was in the university library, buried under a mountain of biology textbooks and half-finished lab reports, when her phone buzzed with an unexpected message. Hi Maya, this is Ms. Patterson from the downtown food bank. Bradley Whitmore mentioned you might be interested in hearing about his progress with us. Would you have time for a quick call? Maya stared at the message, surprised. She deliberately avoided asking for updates on Bradley, not wanting to seem like she was hovering or second-guessing her decision to give him a chance. But now that the opportunity was being offered, she found herself curious. She stepped outside the library, into the November cold that had replaced October's lingering warmth, and called the number. Miss Chen, thank you for calling back, a warm female voice answered. I'm Patricia Patterson, volunteer coordinator at the food bank. Bradley has been with us for 3 weeks now, and I wanted to reach out personally to tell you about his time here. How is he doing? Maya asked, genuinely curious. Remarkably well, actually. I'll be honest, when we first got the call about a court-ordered volunteer from a privileged background, I had my doubts. We've had kids like that before, and they usually treat community service like a punishment to be endured. They show up, do the bare minimum, and count down the hours until they're done. Patricia paused. Bradley isn't like that. He's not. He shows up early every single shift. He stays late if we need him. He's learned the names of our regular clients and actually talks to them, not in a patronizing way, but like they're people he's genuinely interested in knowing. Last week, one of our elderly regulars mentioned she was having trouble with her apartment's heater, and Bradley spent his whole lunch break calling around to find repair services that offered senior discounts. He made the appointments himself, followed up to make sure someone showed up. Maya felt something warm bloom in her chest, something that might have been vindication, or hope, or just relief that her mercy hadn't been misplaced. We also run a tutoring program on Wednesday afternoons, Patricia continued. For kids from low-income families who need help with homework. It's not part of his required service, but Bradley asked if he could participate. He's been working with a 6th grader named Marcus, kids having trouble with math and reading. Parents both work 2 jobs so they can't help much with homework. Bradley's been meeting with him every Wednesday for 2 hours, completely voluntary, and Marcus's grades have improved significantly. That's wonderful, Maya said, and meant it. I wanted you to know, Patricia said, because Bradley told me what happened. Why he's here. And he said you could have destroyed him but chose to give him a chance instead. He said that every time he shows up here, he's trying to prove you were right to give him that chance. Trying to prove he can be better than he was. After the call ended, Maya stood in the cold for a few minutes, processing. Then she texted Bradley. They'd exchanged a few messages over the past weeks, brief and somewhat awkward, but civil. Ms. Patterson just called me. She says you're doing really well at the food bank. His response came quickly, I'm trying. It's actually really cool. The people there have such hard lives, but they're so grateful for help. Makes me feel like maybe I can do something useful. Not just be the privileged asshole kid. Maya smiled at her phone. Keep it up. I'm proud of you. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, that means a lot. Really. Thank you. She tucked her phone away and headed back into the library, where Emma was waiting with an expectant expression. Well? What did the food bank lady say? Maya told her everything, watching Emma's skeptical expression gradually soften. Okay, Emma admitted grudgingly. So maybe the kid isn't completely irredeemable. Maybe your weird compassion thing actually worked. She paused. Don't let it go to your head though. You got lucky. 99 times out of 100, privileged assholes stay privileged assholes. Maybe, Maya agreed. But that one time out of 100 makes it worth trying. The semester continued its relentless march toward finals. Maya threw herself into her studies, joined the biology club, started volunteering at a research lab studying environmental impacts on local ecosystems. She let herself be just another college student, albeit one with a discreet security detail and a billionaire father checking in daily. Her father kept his promise about backing off. He didn't show up unannounced. Didn't send overwhelming amounts of money or gifts. Just called every evening, asked about her day, offered advice when requested and stayed silent when it wasn't. They were building something new, she and her father, a relationship based on mutual respect and trust rather than protection and control. Detective Maya Chen, her security detail, became a familiar, comfortable presence. Maya would catch glimpses of her on campus sometimes, always at a respectful distance, never intrusive. Once, when a drunk guy at a party got too aggressive about Maya giving him her number, Sarah appeared from nowhere, flashed what was probably a fake campus security badge, and escorted the guy out. She winked at Maya and disappeared back into the crowd, never mentioned it again. The Target incident became a story Maya told sometimes, when the context was right. About privilege and accountability, about mercy and justice, about the complicated work of being human. Some people thought she'd been too lenient with Bradley. Others thought she'd handled it perfectly. Maya stopped worrying about which camp was right and focused instead on the outcome, one fewer bully in the world, one more person trying to do good. December brought finals in bitter cold, the kind that turned the campus into a frozen landscape of hurrying students bundled in winter coats. Maya was in the library again, her second home at this point, when she received an unexpected email. The subject line read, Community Service Completion Report, Bradley Whitmore. Maya opened it to find a formal document from Sarah Martinez, her father's head of security, who'd been overseeing Bradley's community service requirements. Attached were detailed reports from both the Downtown Food Bank and the Youth Mentorship Program, along with testimony from supervisors, fellow volunteers, and even some of the people Bradley had helped. The summary was remarkable. Bradley had completed his required 100 hours in just over 2 months, but he'd actually logged closer to 160 hours, voluntarily exceeding the requirement by more than 50%. His supervisors uniformly described him as dedicated, compassionate, and genuinely invested in helping others. One testimonial stood out, from the mother of Marcus, the 6th grader Bradley had been tutoring. My son struggled in school his whole life. We couldn't afford private tutors, and I work 2 jobs so I can't help with homework. Bradley has been a godsend. Marcus's grades went from D's and F's to B's and C's. But more than that, Marcus believes in himself now. He talks about going to college someday, something he never mentioned before. Bradley did that. He gave my son hope. There was also a note from Patricia Patterson. Bradley has asked if he can continue volunteering with us even after his service requirement is complete. He's become an essential part of our team, and more importantly, a genuine friend to many of our clients. Whatever happened to bring him to us, I'm grateful for it. He's proof that people can change. Maya felt tears pricking her eyes as she read. This was what mercy looked like when it worked. This was what happened when you gave someone a chance to be better instead of simply punishing them for being worse. She forwarded the email to her father with a simple message, "We made the right choice." His response came within minutes, "You made the right choice. I just followed your lead. Proud of you, sweetheart." That evening, Maya received another text from Bradley, "Just finished my last required community service hour. But I'm not stopping. I'm going to keep volunteering at the food bank and keep tutoring Marcus. This stuff matters more than the things I used to think were important. Thank you for showing me that. For seeing something in me I didn't know was there." Maya thought carefully about her response before typing, "I didn't show you anything, Bradley. You did the work. You made the choice to change. I just gave you the opportunity." I'm proud of how you've used it. Can I ask you something? Bradley texted back. Would you ever want to meet for coffee or something? Not like a date, he added quickly. I know I'm the last person you'd want to date. Just to talk. I feel like I owe you more than text messages, and you deserve to see in person that I'm not the person I was in Target that day. Maya hesitated. Part of her wanted to keep Bradley at arm's length, to let his rehabilitation remain something abstract and distant rather than personal and immediate. But another part, the part that had chosen mercy in the first place, recognized that reconciliation required more than just reports and second-hand accounts. Okay, she typed. Coffee. But somewhere public and with Emma there if that's all right. She's very protective and has been wanting to size you up in person. Completely understand. Name the place and time. They met on a Saturday afternoon at a campus coffee shop, neutral territory, busy enough to feel safe but quiet enough to actually talk. Emma had come prepared with what she called her intimidation outfit, black leather jacket, dark lipstick, an expression that could curdle milk, and positioned herself like a bodyguard throughout the entire meeting. Bradley arrived exactly on time, dressed casually but neatly, his previous swagger completely absent. He looked nervous, which Maya found oddly reassuring. He should be nervous. This meeting mattered. Hi, he said, stopping a respectful distance from their table. Thank you for agreeing to this. Both of you. I know I don't deserve, he stopped himself. Sorry. My therapist says I need to stop apologizing constantly. It's becoming its own problem. You're in therapy? Emma asked, her tone slightly less hostile than it had been a moment before. Family therapy with my parents, and individual therapy for myself. Turns out I had a lot of stuff to work through. Bradley gestured to the empty chair at their table. May I? Maya nodded, and he sat, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup like it was a lifeline. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Bradley took a breath and looked directly at Maya. I wanted to tell you in person that I'm sorry. I know I already apologized, multiple times, but I feel like I understand better now what I was actually apologizing for. It wasn't just pushing you. It was the whole attitude behind it. The belief that I was better than you, that my time and convenience mattered more than your safety or dignity. The way I had been taught to see people as obstacles or resources instead of as human beings with their own value. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Working at the food bank, meeting people who are struggling just to feed their families, realizing that any one of them has more strength and grace than I've ever had to develop, it changed something in me. Or maybe it revealed something that was always there but got buried under all the privilege and entitlement. Emma was watching him with narrowed eyes, clearly trying to determine if this was performance or genuine transformation. Maya understood the impulse, she was doing the same thing, looking for tells, for signs of manipulation or insincerity. But all she saw was a teenager who looked tired and uncertain and hopeful, all at once. I don't know if you can ever really forgive me, Bradley continued. I'm not sure I deserve forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that what happened that day, and what you chose to do about it, changed my life. You could have destroyed me. Instead, you gave me a chance to destroy the person I was and build someone better. That's a gift I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of. Maya felt Emma's hand find hers under the table, squeezing gently. She squeezed back, drawing strength from her friend's presence, then looked at Bradley. I forgive you, she said simply. Bradley's eyes went wide, then filled with tears. You do? I do. Not because you've earned it, forgiveness isn't something you earn. But because holding on to anger was hurting me more than it was hurting you. Because you've shown genuine remorse and made genuine changes. Because I believe people can grow and change, and you've proven that belief wasn't misplaced. Maya leaned forward. But Bradley, you need to understand something. This forgiveness is for me as much as it is for you. It's me choosing to let go of what happened and move forward. It doesn't erase what you did, and it doesn't mean we're going to be best friends. But it means I'm not going to carry that day around with me anymore. I understand, Bradley said, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. And honestly, that's more than I hoped for. More than I deserve. Emma finally spoke up, her voice still carrying an edge but softer than before. Here's the deal, Whitmore. Maya might forgive you, and that's her choice. But I'm watching. If I hear that you've backslid, that you've hurt someone else, that you've gone back to being the privileged asshole from Target, I will make it my personal mission to make your life miserable in creative and legally ambiguous ways. Are we clear? Bradley actually smiled, a small, genuine expression. Crystal clear. And honestly? If I backslide, I'll deserve whatever you do to me. I don't want to be that person ever again. They talked for another hour, the conversation gradually becoming less fraught and more natural. Bradley told them about Marcus, the kid he was tutoring, who'd just gotten his first A on a math test. About the elderly regulars at the food bank who'd started treating him like a grandson. About how his parents' therapy was forcing them all to confront some uncomfortable truths about their family dynamics and values. My mom actually cried during our last session, Bradley said. Talked about how she'd been so focused on maintaining our social status and appearance that she'd forgotten to teach me basic human decency. Dad admitted he'd been using money to avoid actually parenting, just throwing resources at problems instead of addressing them. He shook his head. It's been rough, but also necessary. Like we're finally being honest about the people we were and the people we want to become. That takes courage, Maya said. For all of you. As they were getting up to leave, Bradley pulled out his phone. Can I show you something? He pulled up his Instagram, which Maya noticed had significantly fewer followers than most teenagers aspire to. I deleted most of my old posts. The ones where I was flexing designer clothes or making fun of people or just generally being terrible. But I kept this one. He showed them a photo from his first day at the food bank. Bradley in a simple t-shirt, loading boxes onto a truck, looking uncertain and uncomfortable. The caption read, "First day trying to be a better person. Long way to go, but I'm done being the person I was. Thank you to someone who showed me mercy when I deserved none. This one's for you, Maya. I post updates every week now," Bradley said. Not for attention or likes, but to keep myself accountable. To remind myself why I'm doing this. And to show other people that you can change if you're willing to do the work. After he left, Emma turned to Maya with an expression of grudging respect. Okay. I'll admit it. You were right about him. He actually changed. He's changing, Maya corrected. It's not a done deal. He could still backslide. But yeah, I think he's genuinely trying. Still think you should have let your dad destroy him, Emma said, but she was smiling. But I guess this way is okay too. Finals came and went in a blur of all-nighters and caffeine. Maya aced her biology exam, survived her chemistry practical, and wrote what she thought was a pretty solid essay on environmental ethics. When the semester finally ended and the campus began to empty out for winter break, she felt the peculiar mixture of exhaustion and accomplishment that seemed to define college life. Her father had offered to fly her back to California for the holidays in the company jet, but Maya had declined. She wanted to see what it was like to take a commercial flight, to stand in line at security like everyone else, to experience the full spectrum of normal adult travel. He'd agreed, though not without arranging for her to fly first class and having Detective Maya Chen on the same flight just in case. The morning before her flight, Maya received an unexpected package. It was addressed to her at the apartment, marked personal and confidential. Inside, she found a leather-bound journal with a note on top. The note was from Marcus Whitmore, Bradley's father. Dear Maya, I wanted to reach out one final time before the year ends to express my family's gratitude for the grace you showed us. What you did, choosing mercy over vengeance, accountability over destruction, taught me more about justice than 30 years of practicing law ever did. I've enclosed a journal that belonged to my own father. He gave it to me when I was Bradley's age, with instructions to fill it with lessons learned and wisdom gained. I never wrote in it, I was too arrogant to think I had anything to learn. But watching Bradley's transformation over these past months, reading his own journal entries about his journey, I realized that the capacity for growth isn't limited by age. We're never too old to learn, never too far gone to change. I'm starting my own journal now, at 53 years old, trying to figure out how to be a better father and a better man. I wanted you to have my father's journal because you embody the wisdom it was meant to cultivate, the understanding that strength lies not in power but in compassion, that true justice seeks restoration rather than retribution. Thank you for saving my son. Not from legal consequences, but from himself. From a path that would have led him to become someone he would eventually despise. You gave him a chance to become someone he can be proud of. With deepest respect and gratitude, Marcus Whitmore. Maya ran her fingers over the leather cover, then opened it to the first page. It was blank, waiting to be filled. She thought about the semester that was ending, about Bradley and Target and Mercy and Justice and all the complicated spaces between them. About her father and independence and protection and love. About learning to balance who she wanted to be with who she actually was. Maybe, she thought, she'd start writing her own story in this journal. Not the story of Maya Chen, Billionaire's daughter, and not the story of just Maya, anonymous college student, but some integrated truth that encompassed both. A story about learning to wield privilege responsibly, to use power compassionately, to be both protected and independent, both ordinary and extraordinary. Her phone rang, her father, right on schedule for their evening call. "Hi, Dad," she answered, smiling. "Hi, sweetheart. All packed for tomorrow?" "Almost. Got a little distracted by an unexpected gift." She told him about the journal and Marcus's note. Richard was quiet for a moment. "That's remarkable. I'll admit, I had my doubts about the Whitmores. Whether they'd actually follow through, whether Bradley's change was genuine. But it sounds like you reached them in a way my threats never could have." "We reached them together," Maya corrected. "Your power made them pay attention. My mercy gave them a reason to change. Both were necessary." "When did you become so wise?" Richard asked, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I had a good teacher," Maya said. "Even if he was overprotective and drove me crazy sometimes." "Guilty as charged," Richard admitted. "Though I'm working on it. Detective Chen tells me you barely noticed her presence this semester, which I'm taking as a sign I'm getting better at the whole respectful distance thing." "You're getting better," Maya agreed. "We both are. At this whole new relationship dynamic." They talked for another hour, about the holidays and plans for next semester and nothing in particular. When they finally said goodbye, Maya felt that familiar warmth in her chest, the knowledge that she was loved, protected, and trusted to make her own choices. All three at once. She opened the journal again and began to write. "This is the story of how I learned that power without compassion is tyranny, but compassion without power is insufficient. This is the story of a boy who pushed a girl on a target and learned what accountability really means. This is the story of a father who loved his daughter enough to let her go and catch her when she fell. This is the story of mercy and justice, holding hands instead of fighting each other. This is the story of learning that you can be both ordinary and extraordinary. That being protected doesn't mean being powerless. That showing mercy doesn't mean being weak. That forgiveness is a gift you give yourself as much as the person you forgive. This is the story of one Saturday afternoon in October that changed multiple lives because someone chose compassion over vengeance. Because someone believed in redemption even when it wasn't earned. Because someone understood that the purpose of power is to lift people up, not to crush them down. This is my story. And it's just beginning." Maya closed the journal and smiled. Tomorrow she'd fly home to California, spend the holidays with her father, and then return to college for spring semester. She'd continue her studies, her volunteer work, her ordinary extraordinary life. Detective Sarah Chen would continue her discreet protection. Emma would continue her loyal friendship. And Bradley Whitmore would continue his journey toward being someone worth forgiving. The world would keep turning. People would keep making mistakes and hopefully learning from them. And Maya would keep trying to find the balance between who she was raised to be and who she chose to become. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple. But it was real, and it was hers. And that, Maya thought as she packed the journal carefully into her suitcase, was more than enough. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.